wanted to start with the same question I asked Anna. Off the field, I noticed the whole group came in with "Take Action, Not Sides" shirts. I was wondering if you were interested in commenting on that choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's happened since Uvalde. You know, there are people who have gone to the NRA convention and talked about wanting to spend money to harden schools, but these are the same people who want to take away money for general education. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I think, I don't know, I saw a snippet of Jimmy Kimmel who said all the things that they were pandering for at the NRA convention. The Uvalde school is actually already locked down in that sense. And that's one of the things that kept police from getting in so soon. It kept the shooter in the building and kept police out, was because it had been locked down and they had to get someone to open the door. Now, I know that there's a lot of other things that go on with that, but it is absolutely sickening to sit here and listen to some of the outright lies and tropes and I don't know, whatever, I forget what it is. You know, they're just trying to take your attention away from it so that they don't have to do anything. And I don't understand. And so as far as, you know, taking action, that's the whole point, because nothing's been done. There continue to be more shootings, and, you know, it's going to get brushed under the rug while people line their pockets. And that's a pretty disgusting choice to make, frankly, is to, you know, keep adding money to your pockets while you're protected by armed security, while, you know, innocent people who are not villainous, are not tied to lobbyists and other corporations, they're the ones who suffer, those families and those people. So yeah, it's pretty gross in my mind.
I know it's difficult to shift from that topic to the game. I did want to ask about the early going. It seemed like they were able to get out on the flanks and sort of get in behind. Maybe after about a half an hour, it seemed like you shuffled some things and that sort of stopped happening as often. What was going on and what was the dynamic in the beginning of the game, and how did you shift that to sort of get back into it, so to speak?
I mean, it's a difficult thing being down as many people as we are and having to make some of the changes that we've had to make. And, you know, frankly, we're playing people who are exhausted. In some ways, there's no other way to say it. They're exhausted. And, you know, you come in, you played 3 games in a week. The other teams played 1 game in a week. What are you supposed to do? You know, there's no magic formula. We do as much as we can. We give them as much as we can to recover and eat and drink and stay off their feet. And, you know, other teams are sitting back and they're hungry and they say, okay, we know they're tired. If we jump all over them, then we'll get that. And so we give up a shot 30 seconds in and everyone is kind of scrambling. And, you know, it's one of those things now. If we have, I guess we have like 3 starters or so, or what our projected lineup was at the beginning of the year, 3, maybe 4 starters on the field, and everyone else is out injured or sick. And so it's one of these things, like, you want to talk about player health and safety, and you have to understand all the things that go into it. And that's where I think that the scheduling of these games in the way that they have doesn't take it into account. And so if you go back and you look at Lionel Messi, the very first year he started at Barcelona, he played 3 games. The very first year. And then he played 6 games, and then he played 12 games, and then they bumped him up and he was playing 30 games a year. And then he eventually gets to be able to play 60 games a year. But if you go back and you look when he's whatever, 16 years old, 15 years old, that first year, he doesn't play that much. And there's a reason why. He has to be built up to be able to deal with that kind of load from a physical perspective and a stress perspective. So now you've got people who are a little bit older, but they're still coming to grips with that load. And it's even more exacerbated by the fact of if they're not in all the time and then they get thrown in and they've got to do 90 after 90 after 90 plus travel, plus expectations, plus, being frustrated with the results. Like, that's the thing that people don't really understand, I guess, is that it's one thing to talk about the health and safety in terms of what happens on the field and some of the tackles and some of the positions that players are put in, but it's a completely other thing to talk about just the fact that players are exhausted, and that's unsafe. And when they're exhausted, okay, so we've got now 13 people who are out. 13 people who are out. And there's no other relief for it. There's no other help for it. And we still have to play 3 more games. So if you're looking at it from our perspective and going, you're putting our players in a dangerous position, there's all of that. That's a reason why. And players who are fatigued are more likely to get injured. And so everything that you would imagine has come true. And that's a function of being successful to some degree. It is. We played more games than almost every other team last year. And then we lost a bunch of people to the national team. And they had to stay fitter for longer without getting a break to go into January camp, to go into She Believes Cup, to then come in and to do this super compacted schedule, to have money, because they're not paid enough, to have money be dangled over them as something that they need to go after instead of being able to build up safely. And now we're here. Now they're going to have to go off into qualifying again. And like, what are we supposed to do? We have to put a team out there. We'll get fined if we don't. But it's completely maddening at this point that this is the situation. And I know that everyone else sees it, but there's no 2 ways around that, unfortunately. And we're going to have to try and get through it the best that we can. I give the players a ton of credit for the way they came out in the second half. But they started the first half like crap, and they know it. It wasn't good enough. They get under the cosh, and some of that's fatigue, and some of it's not knowing, and all of a sudden you're scrambling, you give up a goal. Now you're kind of in the game, you feel good, and then we dominate the rest of it. But when you've got, like I said, 13 people out and there's only 3-4 starters on the field, one of whom's in goal and isn't likely to be scoring a lot of goals, then this is what you end up with. And that's just the reality of the situation.
Just a quick one at the end here. I know the halftime subs, both Sanchez and Sullivan took, it looked like Sanchez got stepped on. It looked like Sullivan got caught with some studs. Were those injury subs or were they fatigue subs?
What's the best way to say it? We had to take them out before an ambulance had to take them out. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Thanks, Kris.
Hey, go ahead.
Kris, thanks. Sorry, I'm having camera issues. Ashley, just to clarify, Ashley came out at halftime, which, it looked like she was on the sideline for a couple of minutes after she had the tackle in I think the 13th minute. Did she just kind of gut it out for the rest of the first half to hold off on the sub, and then you had to do something?
Yeah.
And then
Trooper just to try and get through it.
Yeah. And then on the other end, obviously as Gotham took control in the early going, Midge Purse was a big factor. What did you know about her and your preparation for this game, and what made her difficult to defend in the first few minutes?
Not getting good enough pressure on the ball and fatigue. I don't think Midge did anything special tonight. I think it's exactly the same thing that they tried to do the last time we played them. And I think it's similar to what they've tried to do on a lot of occasions. Sorry, I don't know why I've got something in there, but the fact is, if you don't get good enough pressure on the ball, then they're going to look to do that. And they've got people who can hit that ball. And so, you know, you have to decide. And there were too many people that were caught halfway that allowed them to hit that ball. And then we're scrambling. And so we had to adjust. Julie has played against mid. She's done a good job. We wanted to try and keep her in midfield as much as we can because Julie was a rock star in the last game. And she's been a rock star for a lot of these games where she's had to deputize in midfield because, you know, she was coming in to be our left back this year. So she's done amazing, but, you know, we know Anna's done pretty well and Karina's done pretty well. And it really, you know, it's in the first half, we never got good enough pressure on them to make it obvious for us. And so all of the defenders are constantly in this situation where they have to choose. Do we get to step and pressure a ball into feet, or do we have to cover the ball into space? And if you never get pressure, then the defenders never know, and they can't defend adequately. And so if we didn't get good enough pressure, they're now caught having to run back and chase all the time, and it puts us into a difficult situation. So once we fix that, we get better pressure. All of a sudden, the other team's kicking the ball out of bounds, which was the plan all along, but it's really hard to go and do that when you're exhausted. So, you know, it's just one of those things. It's difficult. It's a learning experience, but it's a difficult thing at the same time.
Right. Okay, thanks.